بینرانی بەڕێز جارێکی تریش سڵاوتان لێبێ لە دوهۆکی ڕەنجینەوە لەگەڵتانین لە دیداری ئاشتی و سەقامگیری کە لە دهۆک بەڕێوە دەچێت. بۆ ئەم دیدارەشمان ئێمە میوانێکمان هەیە، میوانەکەمان زۆر بەڕێز پرۆفیسۆر دکتۆر لیام ئەندەرسن، پسپۆری سیاسەتی نێودەوڵەتی لە زانکۆی ڕایت ستیت لە ئەمریکا. Dr. Liam, thank you very much for this interview with Kurdistan24. Let us talk about federalism as a way of solving a problem. In Iraq, you know that we have a kind of federation or kind of federalism, but unfortunately until now, Iraq doesn't want to expand this or to accept this federalism which is being written in the constitution of Iraq. What is the reason behind that? Why they want a centralizing authority again, like before?
I think there's general acceptance. Somewhat more. Some are more reluctant than others to that the Kurds can have some autonomy.
Yes.
I think there's a resistance to a system of federalism. So, federalism in autonomy in the rest of Iraq.
Yes.
And I think some of that actually comes literally from the use of the term federalism. I've studied quite a lot of, if you look at opinion polls on this, for example, in Syria and in Iraq, if you use the word federalism, Arabs don't like this word, right? They will say, we're not in favor of federalism. If you talk about decentralization, taking power from the center and giving it to regions, it's much more popular. So the word federalism itself, I think, is a problem. I think a lot of Arabs associate that with the word partition, which in the Middle East is not a...
Dr. Liam, why they don't understand that federalism is not splitting the country, it's a power for the country?
I absolutely, I would agree with you, but I think once you have it in your mind that this is a Western imposition, and therefore it must be designed to divide you rather than make you more powerful. I think that's a lot of the association with the term federalism. It's actually, I mean, the Ottoman Empire was kind of federal in some respects, and
yes,
there were obviously various projects for Arab federations and this sort of stuff. So it's not actually an alien term, but I think it's associated with the West, and I think it's therefore it's obviously intended to divide and weaken the country. Now that's not true, but you know I think federalism is a very...
Dr. Liam, I mean they don't realize that. Look at the stability and peace and security in Kurdistan compared to the rest of Iraq. There is no peace, no security, no stability as well. So they don't realize that this federation, this kind of federalism, it's the best for Iraq. For example, if Sunni they have a federation for themselves, Shia federation for themselves, and also Kurds, this is the power for Iraq. Why they don't want to accept? This is the reality about Iraq. Why they don't want it?
Well, I think
this is a big question. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. I think the idea of a Kurdish region, Sunni region, and Shia region, I think is probably not. It's not going to happen because I think the process by which governorates form regions is a bottom-up process, and I think there isn't the support for a big Shia region, but there is support for becoming a region in Basra, for example. Basra has tried multiple times to start the process,
yes,
to transition from a governorate to a region. I think 5 times, and the federal government each time has said no. Anbar certainly has thought about this,
yes,
and I would think possibly after what's happened to the speaker, they may be reconsidering in Anbar whether to do this, to transition to regional status, because clearly it doesn't appear like there's room in Baghdad for Sunni leaders. So why would you not? So I think this can certainly happen. I just don't think it'll end up with a single Sunni region and a single Shia region. And I think, in fact, it's better that doesn't happen. But I think, I mean, what the Kurdish government should do is to support these processes. And, for example, there's a Kurdish president. There's always a Kurdish president, right?
Yes.
The Kurdish president needs to get on TV and say to the federal government, these guys have initiated the process, you have to carry out the referendum, because it's the federal government that has to carry out the vote. So I think the Kurds would be well advised, I think, to invest time and resources in helping places like Basra to navigate this transition. Mm-hmm. And I think if we were to do that, you may end up with federalism across Iraq.
Right, Dr. Liam, if the Iraqi rulers with this mentality, with this mentality doesn't accept the federalism as a system for the country, do you expect any kind of conflicts between Sunni, Shia, Kurds, Sunnis, Kurds? Do you accept
conflicts?
Expecting, yes, a kind of conflicts?
I think the idea would be, in fact, that if Basra became a region, it would be a region built around an identity that's attached to Basra rather than a Shia identity. And if Anbar transitioned from governorate to region, the identity would be with Anbar, not as a Sunni region. Mm-hmm. And I think that way you can actually decrease the possibility of conflicts. I mean, that's what one of the things federalism can do. It can allow people who are different from each other to live together in the same country.
But Dr. Liam, this is the reality of Iraq. This is the fact about Iraq. If you look at the Switzerland, different nation, they have a perfect federalism in a very strong, stable country. And this is a reality in Iraq. We have Sunni, we have Shia, we have Kurds.
Yes, I mean, that also, if you look at where Switzerland is, it's surrounded by European countries, right? And it's been neutral. So it doesn't face, I mean, if Iraq's always suffered from external actors interfering in its internal affairs. If you think, I mean, right now, Turkey's dropping bombs on Kurdistan, Iran's dropping bombs on Kurdistan, yes. And the US, of course, has been heavily involved in Iraq. So Switzerland doesn't suffer from any of that.
Yes.
So I think the contexts are kind of different. But Switzerland was also formed it's actually a confederation. So the bits of the Swiss confederation came together and voluntarily and formed a union. And so it was a voluntary act. And if one bit of this voluntary union doesn't want to be part of the union anymore, it can leave the union. So there's a slightly different context around the formation of the Swiss Federation as well. But in other countries, I mean, Nigeria is a good example. Nigeria is a federation, and it's not perfectly peaceful, but there's a lot of ethnic differences, a lot of different ethnic groups, a lot of different linguistic groups. North of the country's Muslim, south of the country's Christian or animist. So there's all sorts of, I mean, it's more kind of diverse than Iraq. And yet it's a federation, and the federation helps all of these different groups of people to live together in relative peace.
Okay, if we come to Palestinian and Israeli conflict, why the Palestinians, they don't accept a kind of federation or kind of federalism? They are asking for a state, but they don't allow the Kurds to have a state.
Oh, look, I'm completely with you. There's no rules to this, who gets their own state, right? Because Kosovo is got independence, and yes. It doesn't. We saw in 2017 the international community, other than Israel and Hungary, I think, are not interested in an independent Kurdish state. But the wrong question to ask is, isn't this wrong? Because yes, it's a double standard, and it's about power. It's not about what's right and what's wrong, and that's just the reality of international
Maybe the
politics.
interests of European countries and Americas.
Say again?
Interest? It's their interest?
Well, yes, and it's their perceived interest. So America doesn't perceive it to be in America's interests for there to be an independent Kurdish state.
Okay.
Turkey doesn't perceive it to be in Turkey's interest, Iran doesn't perceive it, and so none of the more powerful players in the system perceive it to be in their interest, so you don't get a
But the
Kurdish
conflict
state.
will continue.
Yes.
It's better for them to accept that kind of federation to solving Kurdish problem, isn't it?
Well, I think federalism was intended to function in Iraq as a compromise
Yes.
between independence for Kurdistan and a centralized system controlled totally from Baghdad. So it's kind of a compromise, somewhere in the middle there.
Right.
But it has to work properly, and I think federalism is not working properly in
Not,
Iraq.
Unfortunately not.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah.
Because I think your recent Supreme Court decision,
Yes, we saw it, yeah.
and I've read the decision, and it makes no sense logically.
At all.
It's like the court decided what the decision was done before, and then just used the judgment to
That's right.
explain
Just-
why it's getting to a
Just
pre-
they wrote few sentences and that's it.
It doesn't make any sense, I can tell you.
Okay.
It's a nonsense decision. But I guess it's happened, right? It's also not clear to me at all
Right.
why the Supreme Court can fire the Speaker of the Parliament. That's not something courts do. I mean,
Right. Yes.
So I think this federal court is a real problem.
Okay. Dr. Liam Anderson, thank you very much for this interview with Kurdistan24.
yeah.
We appreciate that. Thank you very much for this interview.
Sure.